This is Reset Your Buttons with Mary Elizabeth Murphy. Today's episode, Turned the Table, was recorded at Groove Studio in beautiful Concord, North Carolina. And today we switch it up. Mark Shropshire of Focal Groove will interview Mary Elizabeth. We get an inside look at the reset model. Enjoy.
Have you ever reacted to something and thought, why did I respond that way? Or felt hijacked emotionally by a situation that didn't seem that big on the surface? Well, today we're introducing a powerful framework called Reset Your Buttons, and the woman behind it, Mary Elizabeth Murphy. Hello, Mary. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Awesome.
Good.
Well, many thanks for being here. Before we dive in, I'd love for you to share kind of in your own words what this podcast is really about.
So Reset Your Buttons is part of a lifelong journey that I've been on. And it started with my mother asking me in probably I usually say formative years, let's say teenage years, why do you always let other people push your buttons? And I didn't know what she meant by that. And so I, was like, what are these buttons? Where did they come from? And how do other people know about them? And why are they able to push them? And so the podcast is being created or relaunched, if you will, because I've spent most of my life on this journey, 30 years with my company, and the last almost 17 years now field testing research on the Reset Your Buttons model that we created from the book that I wrote.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, Mary, who exactly is this podcast for?
Reset Your Buttons is for anyone who feels like they have buttons that get pushed. And recently I heard this saying, which is your family of origin are the people who installed the buttons, and so they know the ones that need to be pushed, or they know how to push them. They know where they're at. But in life, we have buttons that get instilled, and they get instilled through events that we've had, experiences that we've had, and we also get new buttons instilled. So I've spent my life, since my mother brought this to my attention, trying to better understand what the buttons are, and in fact, how do we reset them? And that's how we created the model, method, and mindset, which came out of the book that I wrote. And for the last 17 years, we've been getting field-tested research on what pushes our buttons and how to reset them. And now we have a model, method, and mindset, and we think other people can benefit from it.
Well, it's great to hear this hasn't just started. This is something you've been working on for a long time. You have a lot of experience with. And I know we'll get back more to Reset Your Buttons, but just taking things back a little bit now, can you tell us a little bit about what originally led you to do this type of work?
So being in the learning and development space, I think came from my having a need to understand what life is all about. And so I've been a lifelong learner, and I've frankly never made a great employee. Now here, let me explain a little bit more what I mean by that. So I make a great employee. I'm a good employee. I didn't like being employed. And so because of that, and would say, well, why don't you like being employed? Well, because I like to influence, and I like to make differences, and I like to make change, and I like to be included. And a lot of times in the workplace, especially when you're younger and just starting out, I can say this now, I understand it better, but you're not always included. You're not always asked for your opinion. You're not always given the opportunity to share what you believe is your really good idea or wisdom at that time in your life. So all that to say, take all that into consideration and roll it around, and it was like, self-employment seemed the only route to go. And so we started Star Resources. Well, technically we started Star Resources after we had a gift basket and balloon business, but that's a whole different conversation.
No, that's great. I love hearing that about your story and how how that all connected, especially what led you to have your own business and sounds like to give you your own voice in things.
Yes, right. I think so. I when I started, so the gift basket and balloon decorating business truly was an entrepreneurial pursuit. I had left. I was a marketing director for a Burger King franchise group.
Oh, wow.
And I lived in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and North Central Wisconsin. He owned all the territory up there. And that came out of a different marketing role that I had. And anyway, long story short, moved back to Chicago and was with my sister-in-law, who was actually purchasing a gift basket for somebody. And I had the perfect entrepreneurial response to that, which was, well, how hard could this be?
That's how it starts.
And that's how it starts. And so started that and had that for about 4 or 5 years. And then I went back into the corporate space of doing training and development and had like a 4-state territory that I was working in. And that company they downsized. And so they were like, you were one of the last hired. So you're the first to be retired. And so at the ripe old age of, I don't know, somewhere in my early 30s, I said, well, how hard could this be? And so we developed STAR Resources, which is Strategic Teams Achieving Results. And I got certified in a product that I love dearly, and it's really saved my life, which is the DISC behavioral style model. Mm-hmm. So I started working with what was then Carlson Learning Company, is now Wiley, and other assessments. And as we grew over the years, we've added more assessments. And then along the way, it took 7 years to write Reset Your Buttons. And then we've now had Reset Your Buttons for, like I said, almost 17, 18 years that we've been using it and field testing it. And here we are, 30 some years later.
Wow.
Star Resources and Reset Your Buttons is doing a podcast.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we're definitely glad to be podcasting, and what you're saying leads me to just another thought here. You've worked with so many individuals and organizations and leaders over the years. What patterns keep showing up again and again with folks? What's that common thread?
Well, it's funny you ask that, because I was just thinking about this the other day. Of, again, kind of the pre-pandemic life we were all living and the post-pandemic life, right?
Yep.
And I think the really good news today is that what we learned is how important emotional intelligence is and how important emotional intelligence is in the workplace.
Yes.
I don't know that we had it. Right. In fact, I have an assessment for it, or use an assessment for it. And we got a sense of that, but I don't know that we really understood how important it is to have mental wellness and relationships, and how do we have transparent conversations with people, and how are we more respectful in those conversations and open, really truly open to hearing other people's ideas. And how safe do we feel? You know, I don't have to worry about getting fired if I say something at my job, but my clients do, and their teams do.
Yeah, that's true. That's the world that they live in. But I mean, you can be an inspiration for them. I know you are, day to day. And not everybody's wired up to do what you've done, and you need to equip people, I think, to work in those environments, regardless. Because some people work in those environments, that's exactly where they're supposed to be, but they need to know how to operate in a way that is manageable and sustainable.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I was saying earlier today that I've been asked to and accepted to be the president of our American Training and Development Association, the Carolinas chapter, and they've renamed.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you. They've renamed actually their American Talent Development now.
Okay.
And I was president of this chapter 22 years ago, and so to be coming back again, a good friend of mine who was on the board with me then said, remember what it was like when we all sat around the table and we looked at each other like, what are we supposed to do? Like, how do we do this? We didn't have a standard, we had no SOP, standard operating procedures or anything like that. Remember her, but now bring all the wisdom that you have and the knowledge and the experience that you have to this experience that you're having now as a leader. And so in addition to the work I've been so blessed to do with so many different clients and in so many different industries, I keep asking myself, how do I be the leader I teach others to be?
That's good.
And this mantra I have had, and I've carried this one for probably since I was a president on any board years ago, and that is, if you truly want to learn how to be a leader of a volunteer board, because those folks have no reason to follow you and no reason to line up with you and no reason to execute on what you're doing except for your pure ability to lead volunteers. So kind of going back to what I was saying a few minutes ago, when I'm working with teams and leaders in the workspace, the fear is, the survival button is, how do I do a good job here and maintain my mental wellness and build my teams and do all the things while still making a profit for the organization, because that's their job, and not get fired, right? So the survival button is, how do I not get fired?
Yeah.
If you're leading volunteers, you don't have that stick.
Yeah.
You don't have that motivation. So you have to learn how to tap into and build up leaders around you based on their reasons, not your reasons.
And do you have to look at the individual almost at some point? Like what motivates an individual, right?
Exactly. And so, what's our common cause? What's our common good? What's the thing we're working toward? What's the goal we want to accomplish? But each person that you're working with on your team has their own individual motivation, and they have their own individual buttons.
Yeah.
So buttons are motivating buttons, but buttons are also fear buttons, survival buttons, which, again, over the years of doing this work literally in the world, and because of science and what we know now about how our brains work and how our brains are wired, what's so exciting for me with Reset is it's not just, oh, you have a button and here's the things you need to do to reset it. We now know that, like, their buttons are tied to things that trigger us because of, and I'm going to use this word lightly and heavily. So the word trauma is a heavy word. It's a big word,
it is.
Right? But trauma could be something as simple as, in the 4th grade, Sister Dorothy took me outside of the room in the hallway and told me I'd never be good at math. And for me in the 4th grade, the embarrassment of being asked to come in the hall and listen, I can, like that. I'm there in that hallway with Sister Dorothy at St. Denis, right?
You're back to that childhood
feeling, right? And that's a button that today we know things I didn't know when we wrote the book, but now we know because of so much work that's in the world and available to us, how that trigger moment can show up in other things, and that's that button being pushed. And how do we rework our wiring so that it doesn't have the impact on us that somebody telling you you're not good at something or somebody ignoring you today in your grown-up body, in my grown-up body, doesn't take my emotional self back to Sister Dorothy in the 4th grade.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does, especially when you think about folks who just come at you different ways. And maybe it's not even from bad intentions or whatnot. Right. It just may be the way they said it. It just didn't hit right with you. But being able to, like, put that aside and say, hey, that's what they think. That's their opinion. But how do you do? And it's easy to say that, right?
Right.
But like you're the person who's come up with, here's a system to manage that.
Right. Right. And that's it. I mean, God bless Sister Dorothy. I know she didn't mean to, permanently scar me for the rest of my life when it comes to balancing my checkbook. Her intentions were good to get me to be better at math, right?
Yeah.
Just didn't work out that way. Now, to your point, yes. So what we've done is we have developed what we call the model, method, and mindset. And the reason we have the model, method, and mindset is because RESET is actually an acronym.
Okay.
So R is recognize that a button's been pushed, and that's the physical reactions that we have, right? You feel anxious. The hair stands up on the back of your neck. You get short of breath. We know when a button's been pushed. So when we recognize that a button's been pushed, and just like I just did a deep sigh there, it is that pause and breathe moment. And I've shared many different ways, and there are many different ways that your pause and breathe may be physically pausing and breathing. It could be changing your gaze and looking someplace else. So if I'm looking here, I might look over here to interrupt. It's called a pattern interrupt, right? It could be wiggling your toes, because no one can see you wiggling your toes. I mean, if you have sandals on, I suppose, but
Yeah.
right? So how do I distract my brain in the moment so that I can pause and breathe and get myself out of that trigger moment and into this moment? And what I tell people is that it starts there. It starts with recognize, but after that, it's not a linear model. But for our purposes today, and with our introduction episode, I can walk through what the rest of the model, what the acronym is, in order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So then the E is expectations.
Okay.
So what expectations did I have that aren't getting met here, or that the other person has that aren't getting met? And so, I expected Sister Dorothy was going to tell me to, take the rest of the day off school. Didn't go that way. And she had an expectation I'd be better at math. So what expectations, and if you think about that in so many different places and so many times throughout the day, we have different expectations of what people are going to do or not do, or how something's going to go or not go. So expectations is the place we look and say, what expectation did or didn't get met here?
Okay.
Then S stands for sense of self. And so I mentioned earlier about how I've worked with the DISC model for many years and other assessments. So sense of self is about what part of me has a goal here or a value, which we'll talk about in a minute, that isn't being met. So for example, I may have an accomplishment button that needs to get met. Now, if you're talking the DISC behavioral style, some people have the dominant style. They're not the same, because the dominant style is driven by a need for accomplishment, but everybody has a need for accomplishment, right?
Sure.
Trying to get anything done, whether it's through the holidays or just in life. I want to get from point A to point B. I'm trying to get something done, right? So another one of the buttons is recognition button. I want to be recognized for what I did. Now, in DISC language, people would say, oh, that's the influencing style. They like to be recognized, and they do. But they like to be included, and they do. But everybody likes to be recognized. But how they want to be recognized is the secret, right?
Okay.
That's where the button is, because how somebody with an influencing style might want to be recognized is very different than somebody who has a steadiness style and how they want to be recognized, or a conscientious style.
So you mean it could be like a public recognition versus more of a
Personal.
Adam the Black person?
Yeah. Yeah, personal recognition, right? A nice thank you note.
Okay.
And in fact, you could push a button if you have someone and you do a big recognition of someone who is embarrassed by a big recognition.
Yep. And that might push a button.
And that would push a button.
Yeah.
Right. So again, remembering that not everybody is who we are, right? Their buttons aren't the same as ours. So then there's a stability button, and then we have a correctness button. And so that part of the model, the S, sense of self, is everybody has those four buttons. We have seen and shown over the years that everybody has those four buttons. It doesn't matter your Myers-Briggs or your Enneagram or your DISC. It doesn't matter. Everybody has those buttons. Our job is to find out what they are for ourselves And when you're leading people or building a team, it's to find out what they are for your team.
And it helps you work better with each individual of the team, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So then emphasize core values is the second E. And it's, again, I can adjust my sense of self buttons a whole lot, and even my expectation buttons a whole lot easier than I'm going to adjust my values. And that's a much longer episode for a future date. But if you just think about, we like to give the example of when you were a young person and you think about your parents or your elders, like everything they said, the sun rose and set on what they said. You valued them and you valued their opinion. And then you became a teenager.
Everything gets interesting then.
Those values begin to change, right? And you begin to develop your own values. And so understanding what our values are when those buttons get pushed, that causes a deeper understanding of how can what I value and what you value, where's the bridge between the two? But in the world of the right doing and the wrong doing, there is a gap. I'll meet you there. And that's where values works really starts, because we need to I need to understand why this is valuable to you. And I hope that you can understand what's valuable. And where do we find our way in the middle of that?
Yeah. I think that's amazing. And yeah, like anything else, if we do track that down, we can always put it in the show notes and things like that. No, that's great.
So last is T, or two last. T is take stock, and that's where we look for where is the opportunity in the problem.
Yeah.
So there's a problem here, because if there wasn't a problem, I wouldn't have had a button pushed, right?
Right.
So where's the opportunity in the problem? And then the last one, the last chapter is actually disarm. And that's the chapter I'm going to start the next book on, which we're going to start working on in 26. I'm so excited about it. And it's about going from reactivity to responsibility.
Okay.
But the idea is that I have one lane that I can live in, which is the I have to lane. And then I have another lane I can live in, which is the I get to lane. And the transition from the I have to the I get to is all about disarming those buttons.
That is interesting, and it amazes me that you've built such an interesting product that carries its own weight in a different way than all these other items that you've worked with, like DISC. I mean, a lot of us are familiar with DISC and have done that. You mentioned Myers-Briggs, but it's wild to just have a completely different angle, a different way to look at things. That the other systems, it complements other systems, but it doesn't. But it's different. It's right. I'm really interested. I cannot wait to go through it myself. You mentioned some of the buttons that everybody has some combination of certain buttons. In today's world, and this probably leads into some of the new book topics, but what do you think makes people feel more reactive, overwhelmed, disconnected right now? What is going on? Because you can feel it in the air, like it's different now. Yeah.
I think that a lot of it comes back to values, right? And that's why I was saying there's a challenge in that quote, right?
Yeah.
Because what I value and is important to me may not be what you value and is important to you. And I think that's one of the places that we have big challenges. I think also the correctness is, kind of lines up with values. Who's right and who's wrong, who's correct, right? Stability button is probably getting pushed, and that's not probably, it is. Where do I feel safe? What does safety mean to me? If I think about, I don't know that recognition for the individual, for people today, I think in the workplace, recognition is hugely important. Society, workplace, different, right? Or can be different. In the workplace, recognition is highly important. And recognition could also be do you recognize me for who I am in the world and what I have to contribute and what I'm trying to say? And then, of course, accomplishment. If you feel like I take 3 steps forward to take 2 steps back. I think Bruce Springsteen did a song about that.
Yeah, there's been a number of songs that kind of cover that idea, because I think it's real.
Yeah.
Well, what happens when we don't reset, or myself or you or anybody doesn't accomplish resetting their buttons? Like what does it look like to not reset?
Well, I think it depends on how do you cope. What's your coping mechanism? And
Okay.
I think that's the risk when you don't know how to reset, right? So a lot of times I've run up against this, and I always am working to clarify this. So people hear reset and they think, oh, I'm supposed to go get a massage or take a vacation, and yes, do those things. But this is an emotional, physical, mental way of looking at how do I reset in the moment, and then where are the places I need to reset in my life. So it's a practice of asking yourself the questions, right? What expectation isn't getting met here right now, and can it? So ask me that question again.
So Mary Elizabeth, what happens when people don't reset their buttons?
I think they're at risk for a lot of illness.
Okay.
I think when
serious stuff,
right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, from you're eating too much. Like, when your buttons get pushed, if you don't learn how to reset them for yourself, and that does not, and in fact, I encourage professional assistance with that, whether that's
Sure.
a coach or a therapist or your best friend who's willing to, like best friends do, right? They'll call you out, right? To say, hey, well, hold on. But if you notice things like your eating isn't healthy, or your drinking isn't healthy, or other ways of doing unhealthy behavior as your coping mechanism, that's where it's time to do something different. And we say, oh, I need to do something different, but really, really.
Yeah. Don't waste the opportunity to make changes. And I like what you said about seeking other professionals as well, because you might have to dig into the why do you do those behaviors?
Yeah.
And where does that come from?
Right. And you don't always have to, right? I mean, that's the idea behind the model, the method, and the mindset.
Okay.
So if the model, method, and mindset aren't working for you, please go find professional help.
You can evaluate the seriousness of the outcomes of your reactions.
Exactly.
Yeah, that sort of thing. You mentioned something earlier about resetting the buttons actually being more of a in the moment kind of thing. And I thought the word that came to my mind was real time. Like, yes, vacations and, massages or whatever the examples are of things that can help you rest and give you a chance to clear your mind. Everybody's got different techniques that they could try for that. But I really like the idea of that. That is the part that we all struggle with, I think, is you have these emotional reactions in the moment. Someone says something, you maybe take it the wrong way. Right. They didn't have any bad intentions on it. You took it as a bad intention, but it's because you're messed up, kind of, in a way.
Right.
And how do you get past that? But I really love the idea that it's a technique that can be used right now when something happens, and you have these mechanisms to get out of that and to reset. So,
right. And the more you practice, the easier it becomes, right? And well, let me say this.
Yeah.
The easier it becomes, but it also it helps get you to a point where, oh, that was something that happened in the 4th grade that shows up in other places in my life. And maybe it would be good to talk with a coach or a therapist or someone to help rewire that and rework that, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is that we've also developed other ways of using the reset model, like we provide a 90-day reset sprint where we are working on goal setting. Because to reset your buttons is an ongoing process. it's not a one and done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a read the book, apply it, and then you just walk away. It's like, it is a lifetime
Practice.
methodology and practice. I mean, I look at it like so many other things that have changed my life that I've picked up, and it sounds like it is exactly that type of thing. I think about David Allen's Getting Things Done, made a big impact on how I operate daily. And I love these kinds of things because they're not silver bullets. They're tools.
Right.
And I don't, David Allen would be disappointed. I don't do everything he says the way he says it, but I've modified it that works for me.
Yes.
But I like how Reset Your Buttons has that flexibility built in it. It sounds like where you, like, here's techniques, here's how to apply it, here's what to do. And yes, you know the right way to do it.
Yeah.
And you have opinions, I'm sure, on that. But there is some flexibility, at least to give people an on-ramp.
It is. And the other thing is with the podcast, what I've done in the past, in the earlier versions was, and plan to do going forward, is people have resets in their life, right? So it's still the model method mindset. It's something happened, you've decided to retire, or you decided to relocate, or you decided to start a business. And so I want to learn in our conversations, in our interviews, in our podcast, how does the reset model apply to what you did? Because what I know is every time I have a conversation like that, we can find the through line. Like, when did you recognize you wanted to start Focal Groove?
Right.
When did you recognize that you wanted to help people with your meetup groups be better with photography?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And what were your expectations about that?
Exactly. Yeah, we have these origin stories, and we talk about those all the time. And I think both Biofidecchia and myself, who's my business partner, that those are moments that we know, and we almost tell the stories the same way. But we can think back to those times and go, this was the moment that we realized this just made sense. And it's usually driving somewhere and talking, or what we were at a conference, or we were. There's something to kind of put the stake in the ground of remembering why it happened or where it happened. And it's so funny. These things are just realizations that hit you, that you almost like, why did we not think of this before? When you want to do that thing. But there's also, I think, things that happen in your life that aren't your decisions, but it could be changes with family, kids don't go to college, get married, move out. There's all kinds of, it goes on, right? Reset Your Buttons.
Loss of a loved one.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Grieving and that whole process. I mean, it's big.
Different stages of life.
Yeah. We all go through it. We're individuals still, but we do have some common threads, like you said, earlier.
Yeah.
And is being human and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I did want to ask you a little bit about Star Resources and that connection. Reset Your Buttons is you mentioned that it's a product of Star Resources. It's just one of the things that you do. It's one of your big things. But it is one of several methodologies within Star Resources. How does it fit into the bigger picture of your work? And if you want, maybe mention more about Star Resources.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Well, a couple things. I am at a phase in my life and in my career that I'm looking to find other people who are in the training and development space and coaching space, and that to bring on into our team, right? So STAR stands for Strategic Teams Achieving Results. And that's been mostly for the work I've done as a solopreneur, working with my teams that hire me to help them achieve results.
Okay.
At this point in my life, I'm looking to now raise up other leaders, speakers, people in the training and development space who also, maybe they're solopreneurs and they already have their own vision, but they could be part of the Star Resources team because they are licensed and certified to use the Reset Your Buttons model. So I may not exactly be answering your question in that what got me here, but here's where we're going.
Yeah.
Right? Here's where we're headed. Because...
Well, it sounds like this is a reset.
It's a reset for me.
Yeah,
exactly.
for you.
Exactly.
Very personal.
It's a very personal reset for me. I'm in the decade of my life where I've gone through my own personal reset. I entered into my 6th decade. I lost my best friend after a 10-year battle with ovarian cancer. She was my best friend from high school. So to lose her and enter this decade left me with a lot of, well, what's next? And what should we do? And how are we going to get there? And do I have it in me any longer to keep doing it? And I've been blessed that I've been able to figure it out. I've been blessed that I had some time and space to take myself through the model to say, okay, we are going to take this lifelong dream that I've held, and we are entering into the legacy chapter. So the reset this is Star Resources and Mary Elizabeth Murphy's legacy chapter.
Well, that is what a great reset, at this point, right?
Yeah.
And to come back and that's a good thing for, I think, all of us to remember, that even when something very earth-shattering happens in our life, and in that moment when you feel like, can I go on? Sometimes it just takes time. The answer is it takes time.
Right.
You're never going to forget, but people in our lives, whether they're with us or not, I always think about that they want us to move forward and keep going too.
Yeah.
And they love us and they would want that. So why did this particular framework need its own voice in podcast? And that could be kind of Star Resources and Reset Your Buttons.
Yeah, because I have believed, and Marguerite, being each other's person for almost 40 some years.
Wow.
We wanted to provide people with what they needed in their life to be better, to have that better, more fulfilled life and experience that everyone is capable of, to be able to live your dreams, right? Yeah. And so often in life, it's like, oh yeah, live your dreams, blah 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 blah, right? That's just, everybody says that, but there are seasons in our lives when your dreams come true. And there are seasons in your life where you're living the nightmare.
Yeah.
And Reset Your Buttons and Star Resources is all about helping people to navigate the nightmare and really enjoy the dream when it's happening.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's a great way to look at it, because we all wonder as humans, why are we having to go through these seasons? And I think that's some of it is getting ready for the next thing.
Yep.
And being prepared for it.
Yeah.
So I know this episode is kind of just the beginning of this journey, and we can't wait to have more episodes coming up, and more podcasts and more media coming out about Reset Your Buttons and Star Resources. What can listeners expect in the future for upcoming episodes?
I'm looking forward to using the Reset Your Buttons framework, as well as, Star Resources, to interview and talk with people who have had their own resets. Again, whether they even know it was a reset or not. And, when we start to apply the model to it and go, oh, well, that sounds like this happened, right? I want to I want to be able to let people's voices of their reset stories be heard by others, because what we know is we identify with other people's stories. And it's other people's stories that help us to say, well, if they did that, I can do that, right? I have no super magical powers. All my experience has been life experience. And I talk to people now who are coming into this business and into this industry, and they're frustrated, or they're having, a hard time, or why isn't this happening faster, right? We live in a time when everything can happen faster.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a reality to running a business and what it takes to run a business, and how to worry about cash flow, and how to build your teams. And there's just a reality that, again, I have the benefit of being on this side of the seasons. Now, I still have seasons that I may or may not be looking forward to.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
But I want to hear other people's stories and how they've navigated their seasons, so that we are helping others in the world, because that's really what it's all about, raising each other up.
That is awesome. It has to be amazing to be in your shoes and be able to deliver that through these products, and just through all the things that you do. I can, like, it's not for me. It definitely is a thing that fits Mary Elizabeth Murphy.
Right.
But I can, putting myself into your shoes, I can definitely see how that is just an amazing thing to be able to do that for so many people and help them out. Well, if as we kind of wrap up, if someone's listening and they really like the work, it's speaking directly to them, all the things that you've talked about today, what's another thing you'd want to leave them with? Something you'd want the listener to know?
Every button can be reset, right? Every button can be reset. And that's not minimizing the impact of buttons.
Wow. Yeah.
But there's a way to reset. And
that is great.
Yeah.
And that gives people, I think, a lot of hope, as well.
Yeah.
That there's nothing that can stop them, and that they have an opportunity to reset. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Reset Your Buttons podcast with Mary Elizabeth Murphy. If you want to learn more about Star Resources, Reset Your Buttons, or have Mary Elizabeth speak at your next event, please submit a contact form at starresources.net/contact.